How many visitors are we going to have today, Horace? I mean, that's like, what, the fourth salesman we've had knocking at our door? How did they even find this place? I mean, wait. Excuse me. Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of welcome across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome, my dear scholars, to the study. Hello there, Julian20, welcome. Hello there, Dr. Zadium, welcome, welcome, welcome. And hello there, Private Maverick, welcome back to the study. I hope you're all doing well this fine evening, or morning, or afternoon, or wherever you are. As far as we are going, we've had somehow we had a deluge of visitors just before the stream started. Quite an interesting time. I think they were like, how many were there? Four different people? I mean, again, how do they even find this place? I know the study manifests stores in various locations across the entire multiverse, but really, I mean, an encyclopedia salesman. I mean, look around you. Do I need any more encyclopedias? And if your answer is yes, that is absolutely correct, because I did buy two more sets. I am such a sucker for books. Um, Julian20, you can never have too many. That is absolutely, positively true. So, how are you all doing, my dear scholars? I hope you're doing better than I am at the moment. A bit frazzled. Julian20 tired. Dr. Zadium doing well. Private Maverick, especially when it's the newest edition. Oh my goodness, yes. I think I actually have. How many do I have? I have three copies of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy alone because I couldn't give up on the on getting the newest edition every single time. Private Maverick doing pretty good so far. Well, good. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear you're all doing so well. Means a lot to hear that. I'm just checking a few last minute things before I start. Because you never know quite, do you? Okay. Yes. Well, enough of that. So, that being said, you know why we are all here this fine moment in time, don't you? Don't you, horse? That is an awful joke, and you should be ashamed of it. Your humor's not getting any better. Julian20 story time. Yes, indeed. Today is a story time stream. Looking forward to it as well. We are reading more of Sky Island. Oh my goodness, it's been a lot of fun this time. I mean, we've been doing the plot's been moving quite fast. I have to admit. We're actually not that far off, I think, from the ending. We are currently at chapter 19, and there are 30 chapters. The thing is that a lot of these upcoming chapters are fairly short. So they're probably going to go by pretty quickly, I must admit. Huh. But we'll see that tonight. So, my dear scholars, my dear, wonderful, marvelous scholars, my dear, marvelous, precious, wonderful, fantastic scholars, you can tell I'm just trying to buy time, can't you? I'm just trying to delay things, of course. Uh, so, my dear scholars, shall we begin our tales? Oh, hello there, Crusader Corrupted. Welcome. Thank you for the raid. We were just about to start the story. You were just in time. So then, as everyone is eager to get started. Oh, thank you for the follow, Dragon Thunder 5000. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our fine family of scholars. I'm so happy to have you here. Ah, I hope you enjoy. And for those who are new, I am Matsu Quinox, Omniversal Interdimensional Librarian. I do gaming streams on Tuesday usually, and reading streams on Thursday. And today is one of those reading streams. We're reading Sky Island, and I am really excited to do that. Dragon Thunder, I have 2K points, but I wasn't following. I'm sorry. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. I'm just glad you're here. So then, my dear scholars, sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage. Oh, hello there, Sophia Ignace. Welcome. Glad to see you here as always. And we shall begin. L. Frank Baum's Sky Island. Why did I have to pause for that for a second? Eh. Part the curtains. Let me just get a little bit of hydration so I can prepare for these voices. Mm. Oh my goodness. Oh. All right. Chapter 19. The War of the Pinks and Blues. And I'm going to pause for a moment because you can't see this. I'm looking at my copy of the book. For some reason, my copy of the book labels the next page Chapter 18 and the following page Chapter 15. I'm not sure if that's only in my edition or if it's in the original edition as well. Much to the surprise of the Earth people, the Pinkies made no objection whatever to undertaking the adventure. Their lives were so monotonous and uninteresting that they welcomed anything in the way of excitement. This march through the unknown fog bank to fight the unknown blueskins aroused them to enthusiasm, and although the result of the expedition could not be foretold, and some of them were almost certain to get hurt, they did not hesitate to undertake the war. It appeared that Coralie was captain of the Sunset Tribe, and a man named Tintint the captain of the Sunrise Tribe. Tintint had a very pink skin, and eyes so faded in their pink color that he squinted badly in order to see anything around him. He was a fat and pompous little fellow, and loved to strut up and down his line of warriors, twirling his long pointed stick so that all might admire him. Excuse me. By Rosalie's advice, the army of conquest consisted of 100 sunsets and 100 sunrises. Many more were eager to go, but the witch thought that that would be enough. The warriors consisted of both men and women equally divided, and there was no need to provide uniforms for them, because their regular pink clothing was a distinctive uniform in itself. Each one bore a long pointed stick as the main weapon, and had two short pointed sticks stuck in his belt. While the army was getting ready, Rosalie the witch went to the center edge of the fog bank and fearlessly entered it. Pardon the coughing. There she called for the king of the giant frogs, who came at her bidding, and the two held an earnest and long talk together. Meantime, Captain Bill had the army assembled in the court of the statues, where Queen Mayrie appeared and told the Pinkies that the sailor man was to be commander-in-chief of the expedition, and all must obey his commands. Then Captain Bill addressed the army, and told what the fog bank was like. He advised them all to wear their raincoats over their pretty pink clothes so they would not get wet, and he assured them that all the creatures to be met with in the fog were perfectly harmless. "When we come to the blue country, though," he added, "you're liable to be pretty busy. The Blueskins are tall and lanky, and ugly and fierce, and if they happen to capture you, you'll all be patched, which is a deep disgrace and an uncomfortable mix-up." "Will they throw us over the edge?" asked Captain Tintint nervously. "I don't think it," replied Cap'n Bill. "While I was there, I never heard the edge mentioned. They're cool enough to do that, especially the Boolooroo. But I guess they're never thought o' throwin' folks over the edge. They fight with long cores that have weights on the ends, which coil round you and make you helpless in a jiffy. So whenever they throw them cores, you must ward 'em off with your lawn sticks. Don't let 'em wind around your bodies, or you're done for." He told them other things about the Blueskins, so they would not be frightened when they faced the enemy and found those so different in appearance from themselves. And also he assured them that the Pinkies were so much the braver and better armed that he had no doubt they would easily conquer. Again, they're kind of using the Pinkies, aren't they? I mean, the Pinkies aren't great people, but they're kind of using them to get out of their troubles. It's kind of a iffy thing, I imagine. Huh. Where was I? On the third day, just at sunrise, the army moved forward to the fog bank, headed by Cap'n Bill, clad in an embroidered pink coat with wide flowing pink trousers, and accompanied by Trot and Button Bright and Rosalie the Witch, all bundled up in their pink raincoats. The parrot was there too, as the bird refused to be left behind. They had not advanced far into the deep fog when they were halted by a queer barrier consisting of a long line of gigantic frogs, crouching so close together that no Pinky could squeeze between them. As the heads of the frogs were turned the other way toward the blue country, the army could not at first imagine what the barrier was, but Rosalie said to them, "Our friends the frogs have agreed to help us through the fog bank. Climb aboard upon their backs, as many on each frog as are able to hold on, and then we shall make the journey more quickly." Obeying this injunction, the Pinkies began climbing upon the frogs, and by crowding close together all were able to find places. On the back of the king frog rode Trot and her parrot, beside Rosalie, Button Bright, Cap'n Bill, and the captains of the two companies of the army. When all were seated, clinging to one another, so they would not slide off, Cap'n Bill gave the word of command, and away leaped the frogs all together. They bounded a long distance at this jump, some farther than others, and as soon as they landed, they jumped again, without giving their passengers a chance to get their breaths. It was a bewildering and exciting ride, but a dozen of the huge jumps accomplished the journey, and at the edge of the fog bank, that's odd. They don't say the fog banks, they only say fog banks, so I'm guessing that's the proper title for it. Where am I? Oh, there I am. And at the edge of fog bank, each frog stopped so suddenly that the Pinkies went flying over their heads to tumble into the blue fields of the blue country, where they rolled in a confused mass until they could recover and scramble to their feet. Excuse me. No one was hurt, however, And the King Frog had been wise enough to treat his passengers more gently by slowing down at the edge and allowing his riders to slip to the ground very comfortably. Captain Bill at once formed his army into line of battle, and had them all remove the cumbersome raincoats, which they piled in a heap at the edge of the fog bank. It was a splendid array of warriors, and from where they stood they could discover several blueskins rushing in a panic towards the blue city, as fast as their long blue legs could carry them. "Well, they know we're here, anyhow," said Cap'n Bill. "And instead of waiting to see what I'll yeah, and instead of waiting to see what I'll do, I guess we'll just march on the city and ask 'em to please surrender." So he raised the long, sharp stick with which had armed himself, and shouted, "Forward, march!" "Forward, march!" repeated Coralie to the Sunset Tribe. "Forward, march!" roared Tintint to the Sunrise people. "March, April, June, October, what?" screamed the parrot. Then the drums beat, and the band played, and away marched the Pinkies to capture the Blue City. Little drink. If I can find where my straw is. There we are. So the war seems like it is on. Again, I don't know how I feel about Trot Campbell and Button Bright basically using the Pinkies to get back the umbrella. On the one hand, they need to, of course, but on the other, they are kind of leading a bunch of people who aren't actually involved in this conflict into a conflict. Mm. What do you, dear scholars, think? Do you think they're doing the right thing? Chapter 20. Jip Giselle has a bad time. The Boolooroo was quite busy at the time the Pinkies invaded his country. He had discovered the loss of the Book of Records, and after being frightened most to death at the prospect of his fraud on the people's being made public, he decided to act boldly and hold his position as Boolooroo at any cost. Since Jip Giselle was to be the next Boolooroo, the king suspected him first of all. So he had the major domo bound with cords and brought before him, where he accused him of stealing the Book of Records. Of course, Jip Giselle denied taking the book, but he became almost as nervous at its loss as had the Boolooroo. He secretly believed that Button Bright had taken the book from the treasure chamber, and if this were true, it might prove as great a misfortune as if the king had kept it locked up. For Button Bright had escaped into the fog bank, and Jip Giselle was afraid the boy would never again be seen in the Blue Country. He did not tell the Boolooroo of this suspicion, because in that case the king would realize he was secure, and that his deception could never be proved against him. The major domo simply denied taking the record book, and the Boolooroo did not believe he spoke truly. To prevent his rival from ever becoming the ruler of the Blue Country, the Boolooroo determined to have him patched. But for some time, he could find no other Blueskin to patch him with. No one had disobeyed a command or done anything wrong. So the king was in a quandary, until he discovered that a servant named Tiggle had mixed the royal nectar for Cap'n Bill, who had been ordered to do it at the time of his capture. This was sufficient excuse for the Boolooroo, who at once had Tiggle made a prisoner and brought before him. The servant was not so long-legged as Jip Giselle, and his head was thicker, and his nose was flatter. But that pleased the Boolooroo all the more. He realized that when the great knife had sliced the prisoners in two and their halves were patched together, they would present a ridiculous sight, and all the Blueskins would laugh at them and avoid them. So, on the very morning that the Pinkies arrived, the Boolooroo had ordered his prisoners brought into the room of the palace, where the great knife stood, and his soldiers were getting ready to perform the operation of patching Jip Giselle with Tiggle, when a messenger came running to say that a great army of the Pinkies had broken through the fog bank. Give me 1 second, I have to check this voice. Never mind, said the Boolooroo. I'll attend to them in a minute. I'm busy now. They're marching on the city, said the frightened messenger. If you delay, most high and mighty one, we shall all be captured. You'd better save your city first and do your patching afterwards. What? Roared the Boolooroo. Dare you dictate to me? But he was impressed by the man's logic. After locking the prisoners, who were still bound, in the room of the great knife, the ruler hurried away to assemble his soldiers. By this time, the Pinkies had advanced halfway to the walls of the city. So the first thing the Boolooroo did was to order all the gates closed and locked, and then he placed a line of soldiers on the wall to prevent any of the Pinkies from climbing over. Therefore, when Cap'n Bill's army reached the wall, he was obliged to halt his ranks until he could find a way to enter the city. Now, when the Boolooroo looked through the blue steel bars of the main gate and saw the enemy armed with sharp-pointed sticks, he began to tremble. And when he thought how painful it would be to have his body and arms and legs prodded and pricked by such weapons, he groaned aloud and was very miserable. But the thought occurred to him that if he could avoid being caught by the Pinkies, they would be unable to harm him. So he went among his people and reminded them how horrible it would feel to be punched full of holes by the invaders, and urged them to fight desperately and drive the Pinkies back into the fog bank. There he says the fog bank and not fog bank. Huh? Guess he was a bit of a slip earlier. Mm. Oh my goodness. Oh, there it is. Mm. Only a few of the Blueskins were soldiers, and these all belonged to the king's bodyguard. But the citizens realized they must indeed fight bravely to save themselves from getting hurt, so they promised the Boolooroo to do all they could. They armed themselves with long cords having weights fastened to the ends, and practiced throwing these weights in such a manner that the cords would wind around their enemies. Also, they assembled in the streets in small groups, and told each other in frightened whispers that all their trouble was due to the Boolooroo's cruel treatment of the Earth people. If he had received them as friends, instead of making them slaves, they would never have escaped to the Pinkies and brought an army into the Blue Country, that they might be revenged. The Blueskins had not liked their Boolooroo before this, and now they began to hate him, forgetting they had also treated the strangers in a very disagreeable manner. Isn't that always the case? Meanwhile, the 6 snub-nosed princesses had seen from their rooms in a tower of the palace the army of the Pinkies marching upon them, and the sight had served to excite them greatly. They had been quarreling bitterly amongst themselves all the morning, And strangely enough, this quarrel was all about which of them should marry Jip Giselle. They knew that someday the major domo would become Boolaroo, and each one of the six had determined to marry him so as to be the queen, and thus force her sisters to obey her commands. Nice. They paid no attention to the fact that Jip Giselle did not want to marry any of them, for they had determined that when it was agreed who should have him, they would ask their father to force the man to marry. While they quarreled in one room of the palace, Jip Giselle was in danger of being patched in another room, but the six snub-nosed princesses did not know that. The arrival of the Pinkies gave them something new to talk about, so they hurried downstairs and along the corridors so as to gain the courtyard and take part in the exciting scenes. But as they passed the closed door of the room with the great knife, they heard a low moan and stopped to listen. The moan was repeated, and being curious, they unlocked the door, the key having been left on the outside, and entered the room. Oh, hello there, Kintron. Welcome, blah, princesses. Ah, yes. I would have guessed that you would find princesses quite an annoyance. I mean, being a fairy tale wolf and all that. Excuse me. At once, the Pinkies were forgotten, for there upon the floor, tightly bound, lay Chip Giselle, and beside him poor Tiggle, who had uttered the moans. Kintron, yeah, most are pains. Yuli and 20 probably eat them. Oh! Oh my goodness. The six princesses sat down in a circle facing the captives, and Cerulia said, trying to remember how their voices go.
Jip, my dear, we will release you on one condition, that you choose a wife from among us and promise to marry the one selected as soon as the Pinkies are driven back into the fog bank.
Kinjon, that they would taste sweet, I suppose. Something has to be about them. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Chip Giselle managed to shake his head. Then he said,
Really, ladies, you must excuse me. I'd rather be patched than mismatched, as I would be with a lovely snub-nosed wife. You are too beautiful for me. Go seek your husbands elsewhere. Monster! Cried Indigo. If you choose me, I'll scratch your eyes out. If you choose me, said Cobalt in a rage, I'll tear out your hair by the roots. If I am to be your wife, screamed Azure, I'll mark your obstinate face with my fingernails.
I'm not sure I choose any of them. I mean, they are outright telling him that they are going to abuse him if they marry them.
And I, said Turquoise passionately, will pound your head with a broomstick. I'll shake him till his teeth rattle, shrieked Sapphire. The best way to manage a husband, observed Cerulia angrily, is to pull his nose. Ladies, said Chip Giselle when he had a chance to speak, do not anticipate these pleasantries, I beg of you, for I shall choose none among you for a wife. We'll see about that, said Indigo. I think you will soon change your mind, added Azure. I'm going to be patched to Tingle here as soon as the Booloo returns, said Chip Giselle, and it's against the law for a patched man to marry anyone. It's regarded as half bigamy.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That oh my oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. Yeah. Wow. Oh wow. Wow. while putting that concept in there. Yeah, yeah. Wait. Oh, that's what they meant. Oh my goodness. Ah, that's right. Oh, Kintron, I would suppose so. I'd be marrying the it'd be marrying his it'd be marrying two different halves. Yeah, that would be true, I suppose.
Dear me! Cried Cobalt. If he's patched, he never can be Boolaroo. Then he mustn't be patched, declared Sapphire. We must save him from that fate, girls, and force him to decide among us. Otherwise, none of us can ever be the queen.
This being evident, they proceeded to unbind the long legs of Chip Giselle, leaving his body and arms, however, tied fast together. Then between them they got him upon his feet, and led him away, paying no attention to poor Tiggle, who whined to be released so he could fight in the war. After a hurried consultation, excuse me, the six snub-nosed princesses oh my goodness, decided to hide the major domo in one of their boudoirs. So they dragged him up the stairs to their reception room, and fell to quarreling as to whose boudoir should be occupied by their captive. Not being able to settle the question, they finally locked him up in a vacant room across the hall, and told him he must stay there until he had decided to marry one of the princesses and could make a choice among them. I don't think any of them are a good choice. Poor Jip Giselle. He's just going through every worst possible situation. Excuse me. Chapter 21. The Capture of Captain Bill. Just checking a few things. Ah. Oh, this is a long chapter. While this was transpiring in the palace, Captain Bill and the Pinkies had encamped before the principal gate of the city, and a tent had been pitched for Trot and Button-Bright and Rosalie. The army had been very fearful and weak-kneed when it first entered the Blue Country, but, perceiving that the Boolooroo and his people were afraid of them, and had locked themselves up in the city, the Pinkies grew bolder and longed to make an attack. One of them, in his curiosity to examine the Blue City, got a little too near the wall, and a blue soldier threw his cord and weight at him. The cord didn't wind around the Pinky, as he was too far off, but the weight hit him in the eye, and made him howl lustily as he trotted back to his comrades at full speed. After this experience, the invaders were careful to keep a safe distance from the wall. The Boolooroo, having made all preparations to receive the enemy, was annoyed because they held back. He was himself so nervous and excited that he became desperate, and after an hour of tedious waiting, during which time he pranced around impatiently, he decided to attack the hated Pinkies and rid the country of them.
That dreadful color makes me hysterical,
He said to his soldiers.
So, if I am to have any peace of mind, we must charge the foe and drive them back into the fog bank. But take all the prisoners you can, my brave men, and tomorrow we will have a jolly time patching them. Don't be afraid. Those pink creatures have no blue blood in their veins, and they'll run like rabbits when they see us coming.
Then he ordered the gate thrown open, and immediately the Blueskins poured out into the open plain and began to run towards the Pinkies. The Boolooroo went out too, but he kept well behind his people, remembering the sharp sticks with which the enemy was armed. Captain Bill was alert and had told his army what to do in case of an attack. The Pinkies did not run like rabbits, but formed a solid line and knelt down with their long, sharp sticks pointed directly toward the Blueskins, the other ends being set firmly upon the ground. Of course, the Blueskins couldn't run against these sharp points, so they halted a few feet away and sorry, began to swing their cord and weights. But the Pinkies were too close together to be caught in this manner, and now by command of Captain Bill, they suddenly rose to their feet and began jabbing their sticks at the foe. The Blueskins hesitated until a few got pricked and began to yell with terror, when the whole of the Blues attacking party turned and ran back to the gate, their ruler reaching it first of all. The Pinkies tried to chase them, but their round, fat legs were no match for the long, thin legs of the Blueskins, who quickly gained the gate and shut themselves up in the city again.
It is evident,
Panted the Boolooroo, facing his defeated soldiers wrathfully,
that you are a pack of cowards. We are but followed your own royal example in running,
replied the captain.
I merely ran back to the city to get a drink of water, for I was thirsty,
declared the Boolooroo.
So did we,
cried the soldiers eagerly.
We were all thirsty. Your high and mighty, spry and flighty majesty,
remarked the captain respectfully,
it occurs to me that the weapons of the Pinkies are superior to our own. What we need in order to oppose them successfully is a number of sharp sticks, which are longer than their own.
True, true, exclaimed the Boolooroo enthusiastically.
Get to work at once and make yourself long, sharp sticks, and then we will attack the enemy again.
So the soldiers and citizens all set to work, preparing long, sharp sticks. And while they were doing this, Rosalie, the witch, had a vision in which she saw exactly what was going on inside the city wall. Captain Trot and Queen Trot, not Captain Trot, Queen Trot, Queen Trot and Captain Bill and Button Bright saw the vision too, for they were all in the tent together, and the sight made them anxious.
What can be done?
asked the girl.
The Blueskins are bigger and stronger than the Pinkies, and if they have sharp sticks which are longer than ours, they will surely defeat us. I have one magic charm, said Rosalie thoughtfully, that will save our army. But I am allowed to work only one magic charm every 3 days, not oftener, and perhaps I'll need the magic for other things.
Strikes me, ma'am, returned the sailor, that what we need most on this expedition is to capture the Blueskins. If we don't, we'll need plenty of magic to help us back to the Pink Country. But if we do, we can take care of ourselves without magic.
Very well, replied Rosalie. I will take your advice, Captain, and enchant the weapons of the Pinkies.
She then went out and had all the Pinkies come before her, one by one. She enchanted their sharp sticks by muttering some cabalistic words and making queer passes with her hands over the weapons.
Now, she said to them, you will be powerful enough to defeat the Blueskins, whatever they may do.
The Pinkies were overjoyed at this promise, and it made them very brave indeed, since they now believed they would surely be victorious. When the Booloroo's people were armed with long, thin lances of blue wood, all sharpened to fine points at one end, they prepared to march once more against the invaders. Their sticks were twice as long as those of the Pinkies, and the Blue chuckled with glee to think what fun they would have in punching holes in the round, fat bodies of his enemies. Excuse me, I have to adjust myself a little bit. Excuse me. Out from the gate they marched very boldly and pressed on to attack the Pinkies, who were drawn up in line of battle to receive them, with Cap'n Bill at their head. When the opposing forces came together, however, and the Blueskins pushed their points against the Pinkies, the weapons which had been enchanted by Rosalie began to whirl in swift circles, so swift that the eye could scarcely follow the motion. The result was that the lances of the Blues people could not touch the Pinkies, but were thrust aside with violence, and either broken in two or sent hurtling through the air in all directions. Finding themselves so suddenly disarmed, the amazed Blueskins turned about and ran again, while Cap'n Bill, greatly excited by his victory, shouted to his followers to pursue the enemy, and hobbled after them as fast as he could make his wooden leg go, swinging his sharp stick as he advanced. The Blues were in such a frightened, confused mess that they got in one another's way and could not make very good progress on their retreat. So the old sailor soon caught up with them and began jabbing at the crowd with his stick. Unfortunately, the Pinkies had not followed their commander, being for the moment dazed by their success, so that Cap'n Bill was all alone among the Blueskins when he stepped his wooden leg into a hole in the ground and tumbled full length, his sharp stick flying from his hand and pricking the Boolooroo in the leg as it fell. Oh my goodness, and there is an illustration of poor Captain Bill in this predicament. I unfortunately can't show the illustrations, but it is quite interesting. Oh my goodness. They are such strange looking creatures. A little bit of another drink. Excuse me. At this, the ruler of the Blues stopped short in his flight to yell with terror. But seeing that only the sailor man was pursuing them, and that his solitary foe had tumbled flat upon the ground, he issued a command, and several of his people fell upon poor Cap'n Bill, seized him in their long arms, and carried him, struggling, into the city, where he was fast bound. Then a panic fell upon the Pinkies at the loss of their leader, and Trot and Button Bright called out in vain for them to rescue Cap'n Bill. By the time the army recovered their wits and prepared to obey, it was too late. And although Trot ran with them in her eagerness to save her friend, the gate was found to be fast barred, and she knew it was impossible for them to force an entrance into the city. So she went sorrowfully back to the camp, followed by the Pinkies, and asked Rosalie what could be done.
I'm sure I do not know, replied the witch. I cannot use another magic charm until 3 days have expired. But if they do not harm Captain Bill during that time, I believe I can find a way to save him.
3 days is a long time, remarked Trot dismally. The Boolooroo may decide to patch him at once, added Button Bright with equal sadness, for he too mourned the sailor's loss.
It cannot be helped,
replied Rosalie. I am not a fairy, my dears, but merely a witch, and so my magic powers are limited. We can only hope that the Boolooroo won't patch Cap'n Bill for 3 days. When night settled down upon the camp of the Pinkies, where many tents had now been pitched, all the invaders were filled with gloom. The band tried to enliven them by playing the Dead March, but it was not a success. I mean, really, what would you expect? I mean, a piece of music called the Dead March? Really? The Pinkies were despondent in spite of the fact that they had repulsed the attack of the Blues, for as yet they had not succeeded in gaining the city or finding the magic umbrella, and the blue dusk of this dread country, which was so different from their own land of sunsets, made them all very nervous. They saw the moon rise for the first time in their lives, and its cold silvery radiance made them shudder and prevented them from going to sleep. Trot tried to interest them by telling them that on Earth the people had both the sun and the moon and loved them both. But nevertheless it is certain that had not the terrible fog bank stood between them and the Pink Land, most of the invading army would have promptly deserted and gone back home. Oh, this is sad. This is so sad. Trot couldn't sleep either. She was so worried over Cap'n Bill. She went back to the tent where Rosalie and Button Bright were sitting in the moonlight, and asked the witch if there was no way in which she could secretly get into the City of the Blues and search for her friend. Rosalie thought it over for some time and then replied, We can make a rope ladder that will enable you to climb to the top of the wall, and then you can lower it to the other side and descend into the city. But if anyone should see you, you would be captured. Kintron Pinkies are feeling the blues. I'll let that pun pass. That one, because that one's almost poetic. That one will I will allow Kintron that pun.
I'll risk that,
Said the child, excited at the prospect of gaining the side of Cap'n Bill in this adventurous way.
please. Make the rope ladder at once, Rosalie.
So the witch took some ropes and gnawed together a ladder long enough to reach to the top of the wall. When it was finished, the three, Rosalie, Trot, and Button Bright, stole out into the moonlight and crept unobserved into the shadow of the wall. The Blueskins were not keeping a very close watch, as they were confident the Pinkies could not get into the city. The hardest part of Rosalie's task was to toss up one end of the rope ladder until it would catch on some projection on top of the wall. There were few such projections, but after creeping around the wall for a distance, they saw the end of a broken flagstaff near the top edge. The witch tossed up the ladder, trying to catch it upon this point, and on the seventh attempt she succeeded.
Good, cried Trot. Now I can
Now,
now I can climb up.
don't you want me to go with you? Asked Button Bright a little wistfully.
No,
Said the girl.
you must stay to lead the army, and if you can think of any way, you must try to rescue us. Perhaps I'll be able to save Cap'n Bill myself, but if I don't, it's all up to you, Button Bright.
I'll do my best, he promised.
And here, keep my Polly till I come back.
Added Trot, giving him the bird.
I can't take you with me, for it would be a bother, and if it tried to spell poetry, I'd be discovered in a jiffy.
As the beautiful witch kissed the little girl goodbye, she slipped upon her finger a curious ring. At once, Button Bright exclaimed,
Why, where's she gone?
I'm right here, said Trot's voice by his side. Can't you see me?
No.
Replied the boy, mystified. Rosalie laughed. It's a magic ring I've loaned you, my dear, said she, and as long as you wear it, you will be invisible to all eyes, those of Blueskins and Pinkies alike. I'm going to let you wear this wonderful ring, for it will save you from being discovered by your enemies. If at any time you wish to be seen, take the ring from your finger, but as long as you wear it, no one can see you, not even Earth people.
Oh, thank you,
Cried Trot.
this will be fine.
I see you have another ring on your finger, said Rosalie, and I perceive it is enchanted in some way. Where did you get it?
The Queen of the Mermaids gave it to me.
Oh my goodness, we have an actual continuity reference to the last book. Oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting that. We hadn't really had any references to the sea fairies, but here we go, answered Trot.
But Sky Island is so far away from the sea that the ring won't do any good while I'm here. It's only to call the mermaids to me if I need them. And they can't swim in the sky, you see.
Rosalie smiled and kissed her again. Be brave, my dear, she said, and I am sure you will be able to find Cap'n Bill without getting in danger yourself. But be careful not to let any Blueskin touch you, for while you are in contact with any person, you will become visible. Keep out of their way, and you will be perfectly safe. Don't lose the ring, for you must give it back to me when you return. It is one of my witchcraft treasures, and I need it in my business. Oh, hello there, Densuo. Welcome. We're currently reading Sky Island. Trot is out to rescue Cap'n Bill from the forces of the Blueskins. Then Trot climbed the ladder, although neither Button Bright nor Rosalie could see her do so. And when she was on top the broad wall, she pulled up the knotted ropes and began to search for a place to let it down on the other side. A little way off, she found a blue stone seat near to the inner edge, and attaching the ladder to this, she easily descended it and found herself in the Blue City. A guard was pacing up and down near her, but as he could not see the girl, he of course paid no attention to her. So after marking the place where the ladder hung, that she might know how to reach it again, Trot hurried away through the streets of the city. Ooh, we're on a rescue mission now. Alright, have another drink of water. I am drinking a lot for this time. Oh my goodness. Mm, getting water all over me. Excuse me. Oh my goodness, excuse my coughing. Chapter 22, Trot's Invisible Adventure. All the Blueskins, except a few sentries, had gone to bed and were sound asleep. A blue gloom hung over the city, which was scarcely relieved by a few bluish, wavering lights here and there, but Trot knew the general direction in which the palace lay, and she decided to go there first. She believed the Boolooroo would surely keep so important a prisoner as Cap'n Bill locked up in his own palace. Once or twice the little girl lost her way, for the streets were very puzzling to one not accustomed to them. But finally she sighted the great palace and went up to the entrance. There she found a double guard posted. They were sitting on a bench outside the doorway, and both stood up as she approached.
We thought we heard footsteps, said one. So did we, replied the other. Yet there's no one in sight.
Trot then saw that the guards were the two patched men, Jim Fred Jones Jinks and Fred Jim Jinks Jones, who had been talking together quite cheerfully. It was the first time the girl had seen them together, and she marveled at the queer patching that had so strongly united them, yet so thoroughly separated them.
You see,
remarked Jim Fred as they seated themselves again upon the bench,
the Boolooroo has ordered the patching to take place tomorrow morning after breakfast. The old Earthman is to be patched to poor Tingle, instead of Jip Giselle, who has in some way managed to escape from the room of the great knife. No one knows how, but Tingle and Tingle won't tell. We're sorry for anyone who has to be patched, replied Fred Jim in a reflective tone. For although it didn't hurt us as much as we expected, it's a terrible mix-up to be in, until we become used to our strange combinations. You and we are about alike now, Jim Fred, although we are so different before. Not so, said Jim Fred. We are really more intelligent than you are, for the left side of our brain was always the keenest before we were patched. That may be, admitted Fred Jim, but we are much the strongest, because our right arm was by far the best before we were patched. We are not so sure about that, responded Jim Fred, for we have a right arm too, and it is pretty strong. We will test it, suggested the other, by all pulling upon one end of this bench with our right arms. Whichever can pull the bench from the others must be the stronger.
While they were tussling at the bench, dragging it first here and then there in the trial of strength, Trot opened the door of the palace and walked in. It was pretty dark in the hall, and only a few dim blue lights showed at intervals down the long corridors. As the girl walked through these passages, she could hear snores of various degrees coming from behind some of the closed doors, and knew that all the regular inmates of the place were sound asleep. So she mounted to the upper floor, and thinking she would be likely to find Cap'n Bill in the room of the great knife, she went there and tried the door. It was locked, but the key had been left on the outside. Why do they keep doing that? I mean, it's a surefire way for someone to get in. Why would you keep the key right outside the door? She waited until the sentry who was pacing the corridor had his back towards her, and then she turned the key and slipped within, softly closing the door behind her. Union 20, I have done that. Oh dear. Oh. Well, it just doesn't seem like a very logical thing to me. It was dark as pitch in the room, and Trot didn't know how to make a light. After a moment's thought, she began feeling her way to the window, stumbling over objects as she went. Every time she made a noise, someone groaned, and that made the child uneasy. At last, she found a window, and managed to open the shutters and let the moonlight in. It wasn't a very strong moonlight, but it enabled her to examine the interior of the room. In the center stood the great knife which the Boolooroo used to split people in two when he patched them, and at one side was a dark form huddled upon the floor and securely bound. Trot hastened to this form. Where is it? Trot hastened to this form and knelt beside it, but was disappointed to find it was only Tiggle. The man stirred a little and rolled against Trot's knee, when she at once became visible to him.
"Oh, it's the Earth Child," said he. "Are you condemned to be patched too, little one?"
"No," answered Trot. "Tell me where Cap'n Bill is."
"I can't," said Tiggle. "The Boolooroo has hidden him until tomorrow morning, when he's to be patched to me. Chip Giselle was to be my mate, but Chip escaped, being carried away by the 6 snub-nosed princesses."
"Why?" she asked.
"One of them means to marry him,"
exclaimed Tiggle.
"Oh, that's worse than being patched!"
cried Trot.
"Much worse,"
said Tiggle with a groan. But now an idea occurred to the girl.
"Would you like to escape? Would you like to escape?"
she asked the captive.
"I would indeed," said he. "If I can get you out of the palace, can you hide yourself so that you won't be found?" "Certainly," he declared. "I know a house where I can hide so snugly that all the Booloo's soldiers cannot find me."
Kintron, marriage is worse than being patched. I don't know. I suppose to some it is.
"All right," said Trot. "I'll do it. For when you're gone, the Booloo will have no one to patch Cap'n Bill to." "He may find someone else," suggested the prisoner. "But it will take him time to do that, and time is all I want,"
answered the child. Even while she spoke, Trot was busy with the knots and the cords, and presently she had unbound Tiggle, who soon got upon his feet.
"Now, I'll go to one end of the passage and make a noise," said she, "and when the guard runs to see what it is, you must run the other way. Outside the palace, Jim Fred and Fred Jim are on guard, but if you tip over the bench they are seated on, you can easily escape them." "I'll do that all right," promised the delighted Tiggle. "You've made a friend of me, little girl, and if ever I can help you, I'll do it with pleasure."
Then Trot started for the door, and Tiggle could no longer see her, because she was now not touching him. The man was much surprised at her disappearance, but listened carefully, and when he heard the girl make a noise at one end of the corridor, he opened the door and ran in the opposite direction, as he had been told to. Of course, the guard could not discover what made the noise, and Trot ran little risk, as she was careful not to let him touch her. When Tiggle had safely escaped, the little girl wandered through the palace in search of Cap'n Bill, but soon decided such a quiet quest in the dark was likely to fail, and she must wait until morning. She was tired, too, and thought she would find a vacant room, of which there were many in the big palace, and go to sleep until daylight. She remembered there was a comfortable vacant room just opposite the suite of the 6 snub-nosed princesses, so she stole softly up to it and tried the door. It was locked, but the key was outside again, as the Blueskins seldom took a door key away from its place. So she turned the key, opened the door, and walked in. Now, this was the chamber in which Jip Giselle had been confined by the princesses, his arms being bound tight to his body, but his legs left free. The Boolooroo in his search had failed to discover what had become of Jip Giselle, but the poor man had been worried every minute for fear. Where am I? For fear his retreat would be discovered, or that the terrible princesses would come for him and nag him until he went crazy. There was one window in his room, and the prisoner had managed to push open the sash with his knees. Looking out, he found that a few feet below the window was the broad wall, which ran all around the palace gardens. A little way to the right, the wall joined the wall of the city, being on the same level with it. Chip Giselle had been thinking deeply upon this discovery, and decided that if anyone entered his room he would get through the window, leap down upon the wall and try in this way to escape. It would be a dangerous leap, for as his arms were bound he might topple off the wall into the garden, but he resolved to take this chance. Excuse me. Therefore, when Trot rattled at the door of his room, Chip Giselle ran and seated himself upon the window sill, dangling his long legs over the edge. When he finally opened the door, he slipped off and let himself fall to the wall, where he doubled up in a heap. The next minute, however, he had scrambled to his feet and was running swiftly along the garden wall. Trot, finding the window open, came and looked out, and she saw the major domo's tall form hastening along the top of the wall. The guards saw him too, outlined against the sky in the moonlight, and they began yelling at him to stop. But Jip Giselle kept right on until he reached the city wall, when he began to follow that. More guards were yelling now, running along the foot of the wall to keep the fugitive in sight, and people began to pour out of the houses and join in the chase. Poor Jip realized that if he kept on the wall, he would merely circle the city and finally be caught. If he leaped down into the city, he would be seized at once. Just then he came opposite the camp of the Pinkies, and decided to trust himself to the mercies of his Earth friends, rather than be made a prisoner by his own people, who would obey the commands of their detested but greatly feared Boolooroo. So suddenly, he gave a mighty leap and came down into the field outside the city. Again he fell in a heap and rolled over and over, for it was a high wall and the jump a dangerous one. But finally he recovered and got upon his feet, delighted to find he had broken none of his bones. Some of the Blueskins had by now opened a gate and out rushed the crowd to capture the fugitive. But Jip Giselle made straight for the camp of the Pinkies, and his pursuers did not dare follow him far into that direction. They soon gave up the chase and returned to the city, while the runaway major domo was captured by Captain Coralie and marched away to the tent of Rosalie the Witch, a prisoner of the Pinkies. Let's hope dear Jip Giselle gets treated at least well enough. I mean, unfortunately, he'd have to talk to Button-Bright, wouldn't he? And at the moment, it doesn't seem like he's there. Well, that's one water down. Give me 1 second, my dear scholars. I have to go and reach for another water. Oh, whoa, whoa. Thank you, Horace. Horace just handed me the water. Alright. How many have we done? I think we're on what? How many chapters have we done? So we're on our 5th chapter for the night. Chapter 23. The Girl and the Boolooroo. Trot watched from the window the escape of Jip Giselle, but did not know, of course, who it was. Then, after the city had quieted down again, she lay upon the bed without undressing, and was sound asleep in a minute. The blue dawn was just breaking when she opened her eyes. With a start of fear that she might have overslept, but soon she found that no one else in the palace was yet astir. Even the guards had gone to sleep by this time, and were adding their snores to the snores of the other inhabitants of the royal palace. So the little girl got up, and finding an ewer, ewer of water and a basin upon the dresser, washed herself carefully, and then looked in a big mirror to see how her hair was. To her astonishment, there was no reflection at all. Oh my goodness, Trot is a vampire! The mirror was blank so far as Trot was concerned. She laughed a little at that, remembering she wore the ring of Rosalie the witch, which rendered her invisible. Then she slipped quietly out of the room, and found it was already light enough in the corridors for her to see all objects distinctly. Firefly, Ozhor. Yes, Ozhor indeed. Hello there, Firefly. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We are on our 5th chapter for the night. After hesitating a moment which way to turn, she decided to visit the snub-nosed princesses, and passed through the big reception room to the sleeping room of Indigo. There this princess, the crossest and most disagreeable of all the disagreeable 6, was curled up in bed and slumbering cozily. Firefly, I've just been lurking, lol. Ah, okay, I see. The little blue dog came trotting out of Indigo's boudoir and crowed like a rooster, for although he could not see Trot, his keen little nose scented her presence. Thinking it time the princess awoke, Trot leaned over and gave her Snubnose a good twink, and at once Indigo yelled and sat up, glaring around her to see who had dared to pull her nose. Trot, standing back in the room, threw a sofa pillow that caught the princess on the side of her head. At once Indigo sprang out of bed and rushed into the chamber of Cobalt, which adjoined her own. Thinking it was this sister who had slyly attacked her, Indigo rushed at the sleeping Cobalt and slapped her face. At once there was war. The other 4 princesses, hearing the screams and cries of rage, came running into Cobalt's room, and as fast as they appeared, Trot threw pillows at them, so that presently all 6 were indulging in a free-for-all battle, and snarling like tigers. The blue lamb came trotting into the room, and Trot leaned over and petted the pretty little animal. But as she did so, she became visible for an instant, each pat destroying the charm of the ring, while the girl was in contact with a living creature. Kintron Princess Catfight. Yes, indeed, apparently. These flashes permitted some of the princesses to see her, and at once they rushed towards her with furious cries. But the girl realized what had happened, and leaving the lamb, she stepped back into a corner, and her frenzied enemies failed to find her. It was a little dangerous, though, remaining in a room where 6 girls were feeling all around for her, so she went away and left them to their vain search while she renewed her hunt for Cap'n Bill. The sailor man did not seem to be in any of the rooms she entered, so she decided to visit the Booloroo's own apartments. In the room where Rosalie's vision had shown them the magic umbrella lying underneath a cabinet, Trot attempted to find it, for she considered that next to rescuing Captain Bill, this was the most important task to accomplish. But the umbrella had been taken away and was no longer beneath the cabinet. This was a severe disappointment to the child, but she reflected that the umbrella was surely someplace in the Blue City, so there was no need to despair. Finally, she entered the king's own sleeping chamber, and found the Boolooroo in bed and asleep, with a funny nightcap tied over his egg-shaped head. As Trot looked at him, she was surprised to see that he had one foot out of bed, and that to his big toe was tied a cord that led out of the bedchamber into a small dressing room beyond. Trot slowly followed this cord, and in the dressing room came upon Cap'n Bill, who was lying asleep upon a lounge and snoring with great vigor. His arms were tied to his body, and his body was tied fast to the lounge. The wooden leg stuck out into the room at an angle, and the shoe on his one foot had been removed so that the end of the cord could be fastened to the sailor's big toe. This arrangement had been a clever thought of the Boolooroo. Fearing his important prisoner might escape before he was patched, as Jip Giselle had done, the cruel King of the Blues had kept Cap'n Bill in his private apartments, and had tied his own big toe to the prisoner's big toe, so that if the sailor made any attempt to get away, he would pull on the cord, and that would arouse the Boolooroo. Trot saw through this cunning scheme at once, so the first thing she did was to untie the cord from Cap'n Bill's big toe and retie it to a leg of the lounge. Then she unfastened her friend's bounds and leaned over to give his leathery face a smacking kiss. Aww. Cap'n Bill sat up and rubbed his eyes. He looked around the room and rubbed his eyes again, seeing no one who could have kissed him. Then he discovered that his bonds had been removed, and he rubbed his eyes once more to make sure he was not dreaming. The little girl laughed softly. "Trot!" exclaimed the sailor, recognizing her voice. Then Trot came up and took his hand, the touch at once rendering her visible to him. "Dear me," said the bewildered sailor. "However did you get here, mate, in the Boolooroo's own den? Is the Blue City captured?"
"Not yet," she replied, "but you are, Cap'n, and I've come to save you."
"All alone, Trots?" Private Maverick, get a knife to cut. Oh, well, apparently they didn't need one?
"All alone, Cap'n Bill, but it's not to be done. But it's got to be done just the same."
And then she explained about the magic ring Rosalie had lent her, which rendered her invisible while she wore it, unless she touched some living creature. Cap'n Bill was much interested. "I'm willing to be saved, mate," he said, "for the Boolooroo is set on patchin' me right after breakfast, which I hope the cook'll be late with."
"Who are you to be patched with?"
she asked. "A feller named Tiggle, who's in disgrace 'cause he mixed the royal necktie for me."
"That was nectar, not necktie," corrected Trot. "But you needn't be afraid of being patched with Tiggle, 'cause I've set him loose. By this time he's in hiding, where he can't be found."
"That's good," said Cap'n Bill, nodding approval. "But the blame old Boolooroo's sure to find someone else. What's to be done, mate?" Trot thought about it for a moment. Then she remembered how some unknown man had escaped from the palace the night before. For, by means of the wall, which he had reached from the window of the very chamber in which she had slept. Cap'n Bill might easily do the same, and the rope ladder she had used would help the sailor down from the top of the wall.
Can you climb down a rope ladder, Captain?
She asked. Like enough, said he. I've done it many a time on shipboard.
But you hadn't a wooden leg then,
She reminded him. The wooden leg wouldn't bother much, he assured her. So Trot tied a small sofa cushion around the end of his wooden leg, so it wouldn't make any noise pounding upon the floor. And then she quietly led the sailor through the room of the sleeping Boolooroo, and through several other rooms, until they came to the passage. Here a sailor was on guard, but he had fallen asleep for a moment, in order to rest himself. They passed this Blueskin without disturbing him, and soon reached the chamber opposite the suite of the six snub-nosed princesses, whom they could hear still quarreling loudly among themselves. Trot locked the door from the inside, so no one could disturb them, and then led the sailor to the window. The garden was just below. But, good gracious me, it's a drop o' 10 feet, Trot, he exclaimed.
But you've only 1 foot to drop, Captain, she said, laughing. Couldn't you let yourself down with one of the sheets from the bed?
I'll try, he rejoined. But can you do that circus act, Trot?
Oh, I'm going to stay here and find the magic umbrella, she replied. Being invisible, Captain, I'm safe enough. What I want to do is to see you safe back with the Pinkies, and then I'll manage to hold my own all right. Never fear.
So they brought a blue sheet, and tied one end to a post of the blue bed, and let the other end dangle out the blue window. Goodbye, mates, said Cap'n Bill, preparing to descend. Don't get reckless.
I won't, Captain. Don't worry.
We get a quick drink of water. My goodness gracious. Then he grasped the sheet with both hands, and easily let himself down to the wall. Trot had told him where to find the rope ladder she had left, and how to fasten it to the broken flagstaff, so he could climb down to the field outside the city. As soon as he was safe on the wall, Cap'n Bill began to hobble along the broad top toward the connecting wall that surrounded the entire city, just as Chip Giselle had done, and Trot anxiously watched him from the window. But the blue city was now beginning to waken to life. One of the soldiers came from a house, sleepily yawning and stretching himself, and presently his eyes lit upon the huge form of Cap'n Bill hastening along the top of the wall. The soldier gave a yell that aroused a score of his comrades, and brought them tumbling into the street. When they saw how the Booloroo's precious prisoner was escaping, they instantly became alert and wide awake, and everyone started in pursuit along the foot of the wall. Of course, the long-legged Blueskins could run faster than poor Cap'n Bill. Some of them soon got ahead of the old soldier and came to the rope ladder, which Trot had left dangling from the stone bench where it hung down inside the city. The blue soldiers promptly mounted this ladder and so gained the wall, heading off the fugitive. When Cap'n Bill came up, panting and all out of breath, the Blueskins seized him and held him fast. Oh, poor Cap'n Bill. Cap'n Bill was terribly disappointed at being recaptured, and so was Trot, who had eagerly followed his every movement from her window in the palace. The little girl could have cried with vexation, and I think she did weep a few tears before she recovered her courage. But Cap'n Bill was a philosopher in his way, and had learned to accept ill fortune cheerfully. Knowing he was helpless, he made no protest when they again bound him and carried him down the ladder like a bale of goods. Others were also disappointed by his capture. Button Bright had heard the parrot squawking, "Oh, there's Cap'n Bill! There's Cap'n Bill! I see him still, up on that hill! It's Cap'n Bill!" So the boy ran out of his tent to find the sailor hurrying along the top of the wall as fast as he could go. At once Button Bright aroused Coralie, who got her pinkies together and quickly marched them towards the wall to assist in the escape of her commander-in-chief. But they were too late. Before they could reach the wall, the Blueskins had captured Trot's old friend and lugged him down to the city. So Coralie and Button Bright were forced to return to their camp discom- yeah, discomfited. Discomfited. There Jip Giselle and Rosalie were awaiting them, and they all went into the witch's tent and held a council of war.
"Tell me," said Jip Giselle to Button Bright, "did you not take the royal record book from the treasure chamber of the Boolooroo?"
I did, replied the boy.
"I remember you wanted it, and so I have kept it with me ever since that night. Here it is."
And he presented the little blue book to the major domo, the only friend the adventurers had found among all the Blueskins. Jip Giselle took the book eagerly, and at once began turning over its leaves.
"Ah!"
he exclaimed presently.
"It is just as I suspected. The wicked Boolooroo has already reigned over the Blue Country 300 years last Thursday, so that now he has no right to rule at all. I myself have been the rightful ruler of the Blues since Thursday. And yet this cruel and deceitful man has not only deprived me of my right to succeed him, but he has tried to have me patched so that I could never become the Boolooroo."
"Does the book tell how old he is?" asked Button Bright.
"Yes, he is now 500 years old, and has yet another 100 years to live. He planned to rule the Blue Country until the last, but I now know the deception he has practiced, and have the royal record book to prove it. With this I shall be able to force him to resign, that I may take his place, for all the people will support me and abide by the law. The tyrant will perhaps fight me and my cause desperately, but I am sure to win in the end."
"If we can help you," said Button Bright,
"the whole Pink Army will fight for you.
"only, if you win, you must promise to give me back my magic umbrella, and let us fly away to our homes again."
"I will do that most willingly,"
agreed Jip Giselle.
"and now let us consult together how best to take the Blue City, and capture the Boolooroo. As I know my own country much better than you or the Pinkies do, I think I can find a way to accomplish our purpose."
So I'm going to stop there for now. I could tell my poor interdimensional voice is giving out a little bit. It seems that our heroes are on their way to solving their problems. So I will close the curtain for now, and I shall see you over at our little chat area to close off this fine evening. Hello, my dear scholars. I hope you've been enjoying the book. It's been really, really exciting. I mean, we have a proper bit of conflict going on. Yulin 20, well, wonderful job reading. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. You're too kind. FT Wastes. Aw, did I come back just at the tail end? I'm afraid so, FT Wastes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. I just don't think my poor voice can take another chapter. Unless That's alright. The VOD will be here. Yes, it will be. Private Maverick, thanks for the story. You are very welcome. Yeah, I can feel my poor dear interdimensional voice cracking a bit. So it's probably best that I stop here for now. We did get through, I think, 5 chapters tonight as well, and we are at chapter 23. So we have 30. So we have 8 chapters left, which is actually not a bad amount. And many of these chapters, you need 20, 7 chapters. Oh, 7 chapters. Oh my goodness. So we don't have that many chapters left, and many of these final chapters go by fairly fast. So, next week I will keep the schedule. This is a maybe schedule in case anything happens. So, to be fair, next Tuesday we'll be playing more Tome. We'll be working on completing the photo album in Tone next Tuesday, capturing as many animals as we can on photo. And then next Thursday, we will be doing some more chapters of Sky Island. And hopefully, we'll be getting closer and closer to the end. I've been enjoying this thoroughly. I hope you have as well. I'm still working out on some new event. I do have an event stream planned. I am hoping I can get to do it within maybe another 2 weeks. Maybe. I still have a few things that I need to work out for it. And it will be a longer stream, so I'm looking forward to doing that with you. But for now, let's see if there is anyone we can raid for the time being. Okay. And I see our dear fellow librarian Sophia Ignacy is streaming. She's streaming Horizon Forbidden West, I think is the name of it. So we will go and raid her. Um, but for now, my dear wonderful scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Farewell and bye bye.